A new face for the Texas Athletic Department, and 2 new faces emerge in the NFL. All this and more coming up on College Crossfire.
What the hell's the rest of it?
Here's the rest of it.
Taylor's not even here to defend himself.
I'm so excited.
Welcome into another episode of College Crossfire. I'm your host, Jeff Barker. We got a lot to discuss tonight, but before we get into it, let's go ahead and meet tonight's panel. From my immediate right, we have Peter Splendorio, veteran College Crossfire contestant. Peter, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jeff.
Alrighty. In the middle, we got Reese Miller making his 3rd College Crossfire appearance. Reese, how's it going?
Jeff, how are you doing? I'm doing great.
I'm doing great, thank you. And last but not least, making his 2nd College Crossfire appearance, Carlos De La Fuente. Carlos, how's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Wonderful. Well, we begin tonight with some big news atop the University of Texas Athletic Department. Tuesday morning, it was announced that Texas will hire Steve Patterson as the new athletic director to replace DeLoss Dodds. Patterson spent the last 2 years as the athletic director at Arizona State University and previously worked in professional sports with the Portland Trailblazers, the Houston Rockets, and the Houston Texans. In addition, Patterson earned an undergraduate degree and a law degree from the University of Texas. So, panelists, do you guys think this was the right move to hire Patterson, or should they have hired someone else? Peter, we'll start with you.
Jeff, I actually really like the move. Of course, they're keeping it in the Longhorns family, hiring a University of Texas grad. But more importantly, he has a lot of work experience. He's worked with 2 NBA teams and an NFL team. And in addition, he also has worked in the International Hockey League. And then, of course, he's already been the athletic director for a major conference school in Arizona State. He has a lot of experience.
It was only 2 years, though.
Still, I have a lot of faith in this University of Texas Athletics Department. They're the highest earning program in college sports. So I trust what they're going to do. They could have hired anybody, so I trust their judgment. I think that they were definitely going to zero in on the right guy, and I think they might have gotten him.
Okay. Peter likes the call. Reese?
I'm going to agree here as well. I think it's a really good move. You know, Oliver Luck was sort of the favorite early on with his ties to Bill Powers, and he had pretty much everything he could want. But Steve Patterson, they talk about this sort of culture change and changing of the guard here at University of Texas, trying to get things back on track and become the powerhouse that they were. And I think they're on the way to doing that. You know, Steve Patterson brought the NBA All-Star Game to Houston. He bought a Super Bowl to Reliant Stadium. And his business background and ability to make tough decisions, he's made over 100 coaching staff changes at Arizona State and really turned that program into a pretty competitive program in the NCAA. And I think Texas athletics is headed in a good direction.
So you think that Patterson can bring that culture change? Do you think Texas football and other Texas athletic need?
I agree. I think he'll be able to make the tough decisions.
Okay. Carlos?
Well, I should have gone first. They said all my points. But yes, like I believe that Patterson, being a graduate from UT and having even also his law school, like he has close ties to Texas, and I believe he's a better candidate than Oliver Luck, because Oliver Luck, he messed out his credentials he still has sanctions from the NCAA. That's something that Patterson does not have, so that also gives his credibility. You know, he's a well-centered man that doesn't want to like break any laws, and he's straightforward.
No nonsense guy.
No nonsense guy. That like young gentleman says here, like he changed a whole bunch of people in ASU, and I think if Texas needs change, he will do it.
Okay. So everybody, good points right there. You guys all like the move. Nobody said Oliver Luck should have been hired over Patterson. I'm going to give the point to Reese on this one. He's the one that mentioned culture change. I think that's going to be really important with Patterson coming in. I think we might see some moving around of those coaches. You guys got any speculation on that before we continue?
I think Mac Brown is safe, especially if they can finish off this run for the Big 12. Maybe even one loss. I think he's definitely safe. He's the coach. The players love playing for him.
Right. I think Mac Brown leaves on his own terms. I think Rick Barnes, the head basketball coach, depending on how this season goes, I think that seat is definitely the hottest right now in Austin.
Okay.
I think the hot seat right now is Texas baseball. We know Augie Garrido, he's one of the most winning coaches in the history of collegiate baseball. But right now, the last season, they did not even reach the Big 12 tournament. And before that, they have 2 years now, they have not reached the NCAA championship. So it's hot right now.
Okay. Well, like I said, Reese is going to start us off with a point on this one. Moving from Texas athletics, more specifically, the Texas football team took down the Kansas Jayhawks 35-13 this past Saturday. The win was the 5th straight for the Longhorns to remain undefeated in Big 12 play. Although Texas has been on fire lately, they still aren't getting any love in the polls. Many people, including head coach Mac Brown, believe that the Longhorns should be ranked, but where do you guys believe Texas should be in the rankings? Reese, we'll start with you on this one.
I'd put them at about 21. You know, UCF currently is 21, University of Central Florida in the American Athletic Conference, and they're 21 with a pretty bad loss. And you have teams like Arizona State, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, a couple of these other 2-loss teams. UCLA, you can make an argument for them to still be in rank. They've had some pretty decent losses. But I think Texas absolutely deserves to be in there after winning 5 straight games in what's probably the 3rd best conference in NCAA athletics right now. They still have the 2 bad losses sort of looming over them, but the way they've played, only 1 game has been close, and that was, of course, the Iowa State game. Their defense has had a complete turnaround, and under the leadership and the sort of moxie of Case McCoy in this great running game, I think they're absolutely a top 25 team right now.
Alrighty, Carlos?
I think the dominant win over Oklahoma shows that Texas, with the good defense, shows like how they should be playing throughout the entire year without Manny Diaz. So I believe there should be the top 15 team. I'm going to say...
You think top 15?
Top 15, 45-35. That ought to say every Texas fan knows what happened that season after losing to Texas Tech. You know, I think Mac Brown's is doing a wonderful job. He's going to lobby for the team because he knows that the polls are very, very important to get into a BCS game.
Okay, so if you said top 15, where exactly do you have
I would say
there?
15 right now, depending on the next few games. You know, right now they're going to Morgantown. That game's not going to change much because it's a weak West Virginia team that's really inconsistent. But the next 3 games after that is going to be very, very important for them. They're going to show they're the real Texas team that everybody expected at the beginning of the season or not.
All right, that's a bold call, Carlos, but I like it. Peter?
Well, I agree. I would have ranked Texas personally. I do understand why they're not ranked. Of course, they have won 5 games in a row, and I think in the last 3 games especially where they've scored more than 30 and held opponents under 20, they've really shown that this is a team that obviously is good enough to be one of the top 25 teams in the nation. But, of course, they've lost 2 games against BYU and Ole Miss, 2 schools that are unranked at this point, and because of that, I feel like that is a reason that they should be held out of it right now. I would have ranked them, but I can see the reasoning. When I look at some of the other 2-loss teams like LSU, A&M, South Carolina, I mean, these are schools that are losing against other big competition. They haven't lost to anybody quite to the caliber of BYU.
True, but Reese did mention some of the other teams, like I think you mentioned Central Florida and Arizona State, who have both lost to some pretty poor competition as well. So.
Right, but I don't necessarily think they should be in there either.
Okay, but so specifically, Carlos says 15. Reese, where do you have them
I'd put them right at 21, ahead of University of Central Florida and the other 2-loss teams, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Arizona State, and I think Texas Tech should fall out of the rankings.
Okay, Peter?
Count me in for 25th. I want them to take Texas Tech's spot.
Okay. I'm going to give Carlos a point on this one. He came with the most bold prediction with Texas at 15. So moving on, keeping it in college football. After a convincing 41-14 win this past weekend against rival Miami, Florida State reclaimed the number 2 spot in the BCS standings. This win essentially allows the Seminoles to control their own destiny for a trip to the NCAA title game. They will most likely be favored in each of their final 4 games, so assuming they win out and earn a berth to the BCS title game, do they actually have a chance of beating Alabama and winning a national title? This is also assuming that Bama wins out as well, which most people think they will, but... Carlos?
Oh, definitely. You saw what Johnny Manziel did his first year playing and second year as well. You see how he carved up the defense. It's hard for a defensive back player to control their receiver if their quarterback has the legs to move around and be able to scramble around the pocket and be able to have the extended plays that break down. So, yes, definitely. We saw.
So you're saying Jameis Winston can do what Manziel did?
We've seen how he played. We saw how he played against the Canes and how he played against Clemson and that defense. And you see how they played 2 big teams and they carved them up.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, can they beat them? Yes, definitely, because Florida State is 4th in defense as far as points allowed go and 3rd in points scored. So, yes, I mean, they actually are ranked higher in points scored than Alabama. Now, what I will say is that I don't know if it's necessarily fair to say that Alabama is definitely going to get there, because Alabama has the hardest schedule remaining. They have a game against Auburn in the last week, and then, of course, they have LSU. Oregon, if they can beat Stanford, really probably will jump ahead of Florida State here. So I think it's hard to say that any of these 3 teams can't beat each other, but I think it's just hard to speculate and say that Alabama is definitely going to get in there.
True. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if we have 4 undefeated teams, if we have Alabama, Florida State, Oregon, and even Ohio State, or even somebody like Baylor even, who gets left out? Reese, what do you think?
I'm going to agree with Peter a little bit here. You alluded to the possible catastrophe college football could be facing here. The question was, can they beat them? I think they absolutely could. This is, of course, assuming that Oregon doesn't jump them and they both went out and get the NCAA championship bid. But Florida State has a top 5 offense, and to this point, Jameis Winston has passed every test he has faced. He's been absolutely dominant, and right now I'd say he's probably the 2nd Heisman frontrunner. And we saw what...
Behind who?
Behind Marcus Mariota,
Okay.
I think. I think Marcus Mariota still doesn't have a pick on the year, but with Jameis Winston and with this underrated Florida State defense, I think they can absolutely contend with an Alabama team that is still #1 but hasn't had the toughest of SEC schedules thus far and gave up 42 points to a Texas A&M team with 2 losses. So I think absolutely they're a little more vulnerable this year, and Florida State has the capability to go in there and play. I mean, they've thrashed almost everyone they've played up to this point, and especially the big tests.
You know, I mean, the big tests, you bring them up. You think Clemson and Miami? I mean, Miami barely escaped. A couple
I'm not
games
saying
against
they're the
mediocre
near the
opponents.
caliber. Right.
Okay. But so everybody's taking Florida State here, it seems like? Or everybody thinks that Florida State has a chance.
Definitely.
They would have a chance. They'd be very competitive.
All right.
They could have a chance.
I'm going to give Peter the point on this one. He mentioned Alabama might not even make it. Thought that was an interesting point, and they do have a tough schedule to finish out. So Peter's going to get the point on this one. We're going to be all tied up going into the second round. Coming up next, we'll discuss a few breakout games in the NFL and the opening week of NBA play. Stay tuned. It's College Crossfire. Thanks for sticking with us tonight on College Crossfire. Before we continue, let's get a quick score update. Well, we're all tied at 1, guys, going into the second round. In Week 9 of the NFL season, we saw 2 young quarterbacks break out, put up some big numbers. The Eagles' Nick Foles tied an NFL record throwing 7 touchdowns, while the Texans' Case Keenum had a great game of his own, throwing for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. These 2 performances bring up the simple question, though. Were these just one-game wonder performances, or do these guys have the potential to become legitimate franchise quarterbacks in the NFL? Peter, we'll start with you.
I think they're both one-game wonders, to be completely honest.
You think both of them?
With you. Especially Nick Foles. I mean, of course he's not going to throw 7 touchdowns every game, but I've seen some pretty ugly performances out of Foles. I mean, his last start against the Cowboys was brutal. He couldn't even get the ball downfield. He's really done nothing to really encourage me to think that he's a starting caliber player in the NFL. And I think Keenum has a better chance, but still I'm pretty reluctant to say. I mean, he's only 6'1". He had never been off the practice squad before that game. He did play well, but it's hard to say if he's going to be able to keep that up. I don't think so necessarily.
Okay, so you think Foles for sure is the one-game wonder, and then you think Keenum maybe we'll just have to see a little bit more?
Keenum, I'd like to see a little bit more from him. Right now, I'm not going to buy anything, but Foles, I'm pretty much sold on. I think he's not going to be that great.
Okay, fair enough. Reese, let's hear from you.
You know, I'm sort of going to take a different approach here. You know, Nick Foles has 13 touchdowns, 0 picks this year. He's played rather well, 63% completion rating. He had a horrific game against the Cowboys. But besides that, he led the Eagles in wins over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the great performance last week against Oakland. I don't think he has the ability to be a superstar franchise-type quarterback, but I think he can be an average or above-average quarterback in this league. And Case Keenum, meanwhile, has provided this spark that they did not have an offense pretty much the entire year with Matt Schaub at the helm, TJ Yates, and he's given them this energy and great presence at the quarterback position. And it's almost like a little bit of a Drew Brees role, I think. Leadership, you know, short guy, maybe not the biggest explosive type arm, but sort of the intangibles. People talk about his great leadership, was in a top 5 voting for Heisman a couple of years ago at University of Houston. And so I think both these guys, I don't think they're NFL superstar type of players, but I think they can definitely be starting quarterbacks and good productive players in the league.
Okay, so you mentioned Foles being potentially an average to above average quarterback. So if he plays that way the rest of the season, does that give him the starting spot over Vic, or does Vic get the spot when he comes back?
I think at this point, Nick Foles has already asserted himself as the starter. Michael Vick has only thrown for a little bit over 50% completion this year. He's had some turnover problems, and the main point is with Michael Vick is he just can't stay on the field long enough to maintain this offensive spot. You know, they were kind of back and forth in training camp, but I think Nick Foles has asserted himself as this team's leader for the time being, unless we see another mix-up like against Dallas. But Matt Barkley's also not the answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think both quarterbacks have potential to be good quarterbacks. You know, Nick Foles, even though the Raiders, it's the Raiders, they're an NFL team, and you know.
And the Raiders' defense has played pretty well to start this season. So.
I mean, the defensive back, you know, you pride yourself on the defense. You know, I'm the defensive player. You know, they want to stop the quarterback.
Hey. Lights are back on, guys. Looks like it's a Super Bowl last year.
Shining down on us.
Da-da. Carlos, sorry I interrupted you
Oh,
there.
it's fine. Perfect.
Continue.
Yeah, but I think it doesn't matter if it's just the Raiders. The Raiders are an NFL team that pride themselves. They're getting a paycheck to do their job, and that's their job to stop the quarterback. 7 touchdowns against the Raiders. It doesn't matter if it's just against the Raiders. That's 7 touchdowns. That's something impressive.
Sure.
Also, of course, they said about when he played the Cowboys. That's about being consistent. You just can't have one good game and then be called great. You have to have
Exactly.
consistency.
But do you think he can be consistent?
Oh, of course I can. Also like going with Keenum, how he played in the first half. He had those touchdown passes to Aaron Johnson. Then after that, after the game, the Colts changed their game plan and they targeted him, and they didn't get that consistency out of him, and he dropped to 58% passing percentages in the game.
Okay.
So, you just have to deal with it and continue. It's just a few games in their young career. But, yeah, I think so. With time, they'll get to it.
All right, well, Peter, this is not a knock on you, man, but got 2 believers over here, Nick Foles, so I think they're going to go ahead and get the point here. Ready, guys? Moving on to the NFL. Patriots, 55-31 victory over the Steelers. Most points the Steelers have ever allowed in franchise history. So, Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Danny Amendola looking great together. Do you guys think that they can come back? The good games last week, but do you think this is a sign that we're seeing the Patriots team that we've seen before in the past, win Super Bowls?
Absolutely. I think they have a great shot. Yeah, I'm not really sure where they were. They had the pretty ugly loss in Cincinnati, 13-16, and then they lost in overtime to the New York Jets. But Tom Brady has dealt with guys like Kendrell Tompkins, Josh Boyce, Aaron Dobson being his main wide receivers with all the different injuries to Rob Gronkowski and Danny Amendola, and he's had guys like Julian Edelman. The Patriots are going to go as far as Tom Brady takes them, and as we've seen in the past, that's to 4 possible Super Bowl rings in the past, another 2 Super Bowl appearances. This guy's a future Hall of Famer, and as long as they have him and the coach with the cutoff jacket, they're going to be just fine, I think. And I don't think they really went anywhere. Right now, I'd have them as the 3rd team in the AFC and ability to make a big-time run in the playoffs.
Okay, so do you think they're a Super Bowl team?
They very well could be. I think once you get in the playoffs with that home field advantage in New England, I think they absolutely do, because I think they're going to be probably a 2 seed with Denver or Kansas City.
Okay, so the potential for a first-round bye.
Right.
All righty. Carlos?
Unless they bring Spygate back, I don't think they're going to be able to make it to the Super Bowl or actually win it. They haven't won the Super Bowl in 2004. We've known the Patriots are really good in the regular season, but then when they get to the playoffs, something happens and they lose. Might be Belichick going to 4th and 1 and not making it, not converting, and the Colts winning that game and winning the Super Bowl, or it might be just magical play by the Giants in those 2 Super Bowls. But I don't think they'll be able to make it. I don't think they're a contender this year.
Okay, so you think they're going to make the playoffs, though, right?
They might make the playoffs, but then once you get, well, it's a tough division. You have the Jets playing wonderful now, and it's a long season. You have 16 games you have to go to, so it's you can't ever expect someone to go. So you have to go. You have to wait it out game by game.
True. All right, that's a good point, Carlos. Peter?
Jeff, not only are the Patriots back, they are the favorite to win the Super Bowl. And here's why. They are the most balanced team in the AFC because they're 8th in points allowed on defense. They're 10th in rushing. And now Tom Brady has his best targets back. He has Gronkowski, the best tight end. He has Amendola, one of the top 5 slot receivers.
But can these guys stay healthy for a whole season and into the playoffs?
I think
for even half a season at this point.
Well, I think if they can, then there's no reason why they can't win a Super Bowl. We've seen Brady win 3. He's been to 5. And more importantly, when I look at the other teams in the AFC, the Chiefs don't have the offense. They're not scoring that many points. Their defense is good, but they also only have 1 win against a team above 500. And then on the other side, you look at the Broncos, who are 25th in points allowed. Now, yes, they have a great offense, but if Noshawn Moreno turns it over again like he did against the Colts, things can turn so easily. I think that the Patriots have the best team because they have one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. His weapons are healthy now. They have a really good running game and one of the better defenses in the conference.
All righty. Peter, I think we're sticking with the believer theme tonight. Peter's getting the point. We're going to tie it up at 2. Moving on to the NBA now. First week of the NBA season in the books. No team's played more than 5 games so far, but there's still some pretty interesting surprises out there. So, panelists, know it's difficult to speculate this early on in the season, but what do you guys think is the biggest surprise of the NBA season so far? Carlos?
The Sixers, of course, it has to be them. Even the coach doesn't believe in them. The coach said he doesn't know why they're winning. And the head coach is saying that. Of course, they have to be the surprise, especially the rookie, Williams. 22 points. He almost had a quadruple double in this beginning season, first game of the season, first game of his career against LeBron James and the Miami Heat, two-time defending championships. Of course, it has to be them.
Alrighty.
Well, the 76ers have lost 2 games since their hot start. I think the bigger surprise on the other side is the New York Knicks, and that's because the Knicks last year were the 2 seed in the East, and all they did was just get better. They added a former #1 pick in Andrea Bargnani, who they expected to be a supplementary type scorer. They also added Metta World Peace, who's one of the better defenders at the 3 position and is still a viable scorer. Well, they're 1-3 now. They've lost 3 in a row, and they haven't looked impressive. The defense has been a pleasant surprise for them, but offensively, they just look stagnant. They haven't been able to move despite having one of the best scorers in basketball in Carmelo Anthony. I mean,
And Melo can't shoot right now.
he has been ice cold. I mean, I'm not worried about him, but I'm worried about the players around him. Raymond Felton, Amon Shumpert, these guys need to step up if the Knicks are going to be what they expected to be, and that's better than the 2 seed they were last year. I mean, people thought they had a chance to contend for one of the top spots once again since they retooled. And now, on the heels of all of this, Tyson Chandler is out 4 to 6 weeks. I think it's going to be a messy season for the Knicks if they can't turn it around on offense.
Okay. Reese?
We have a couple big surprises in the NBA. You know, Michael Carter-Williams doing big things for the 76ers. Look like they may have finally hit on one of those top draft picks. You have the Miami Heat starting a little slow, looking a little bit out of balance. But I think the most sustainable surprise, if you want to call it, are the Indiana Pacers. What Roy Hibbert and Paul George has done with that team. They took the Heat deep last year, almost. They were so close. But with Roy Hibbert, Paul George, all those guys there, I think they're really turning into one of the top seeds in that conference, and I think this is the most sustainable surprise, maybe taking over as one of the top teams and an NBA title favorite, possibly.
Alrighty. I think Reese is going to get the point on that one. He mentioned the Pacers. Peter, I really like the point you made about the Knicks. You know, it could be a messy season for them. And Carlos, 76ers, I like that point too, but I think it still could be a little bit early on for them to be the biggest surprise right now. So Reese is going to get the point. He's going to grab the 3-2-2 lead going into rapid fire. As I said, coming up next on College Crossfire, it's our rapid fire segment. Stay tuned to see which one of these 3 will be crowned champion.
What the hell's the rest of them?
Welcome back to College Crossfire. Before we crown a winner for the night, let's get a quick score update. To my right, we got Peter with 2, Reese sits in the lead with 3, and Carlos tied with Peter at the bottom with 2, but it's rapid fire. Anything can happen, guys. So our first rapid fire comes in the form of a caption this question. Take a look at this picture of New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady at the end of this 55-31 victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, Tom was quite pleased with his performance, but guys, 2 points awarded to the best caption here. Anybody jump in, it's rapid fire.
I got dessert.
All right, Reese?
Raise the roof is the only thing that comes to my mind on that.
Okay, Carlos, you got anything?
Dirt.
All right, I think Reese is going to grab the 2 points on that one.
It's a rough question.
I like that one. Jumped out there early, Reese. Was a little bit of a rough question, but you know, somebody would go with like guilty, you know, something like that. I don't know, you know.
Hey,
I saw it on NFL memes. But
poetic
it's good.
license.
All right, guys. Well, folks that tune into Tuesday's MAC conference showdown between Buffalo University and Ohio University were witness to one of the worst calls in sports history. Take a look at the play, guys.
Under a lot of pressure. Got to get rid of it. He was about to take a 20-yard sack if he didn't get rid of it. And it'll be 4th down and 7. He winds up, and there's Mack. They're 30 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Tettleton knew that he was still in the pocket area. In fact, I think he never quite got out of it, and that's why he didn't throw it sooner.
Number 4, the ball not make it to the line of scrimmage. Safety.
So you guys see the referee here calls a safety, and I mean, you know, let's take a look at the replay here. So the ref's reviewing the play now. Sorry, we missed the replay, but referee under further review after that play clearly. Ohio quarterback Tyler Tettleton was not in the end zone. He was about the 4-yard line when he threw the ball away, and they called it an intentional grounding in the end zone and eventually reviewed the play, and upon further review, the play still stood as a safety. Clearly a horrible call here, but take a listen here.
Foul cannot be challenged. The play is ruled a safety.
Like I said, still ruled a safety. But guys, 2 points awarded here for this question. What do you guys think is the worst officiating moment in sports history?
It's got to be the tuck rule.
Galarraga.
The what?
The tuck rule.
Tuck rule?
Tuck rule, New England, Oakland in the playoffs, got to be the worst. One of the most historic. I think that tops them
Snowy
all.
game?
Right. Created the tuck rule with Tom Brady and the Oakland Raiders. I think that's got to be the worst.
Carlos?
Galarraga's Jim Joyce missing that perfect game. You know, he was clearly out by a mile, baseball mile, and he caught him safe. And after the game, he realized and he started crying. He told Galarraga, "I'm sorry for missing out on the 23rd perfect game in baseball history." Of course, it has to be one of the worst officiating blunders. And
I like that one, Carlos. Yeah. Peter, what do you got?
That play reminded me of last year's game between the Seahawks and the Packers. Just the blatant missed call at the end of the game, the Fail Mary, the touchdown. That wasn't. It should have been an interception, but they called it a win for the Seahawks. Cost the Packers a chance to get home field advantage in the playoffs. I mean, it reminds me of that, just the blatant missed call in the NFL under the review and everything.
True. I mean, Reese, like the tuck rule. Peter, I like that too. And you said, I think it was just one game, but you did say it cost Packers home field advantage in the playoffs. But Carlos, I mean, that call right there by Joyce cost him a perfect game.
Yep.
I mean, that's terrible right there. So I'm going to give you the 2 points there, Carlos. So moving on to our third and final rapid fire of the night, comes to us straight from Gregory Jim. Our very own TSTV intramural basketball team came out victorious last night on a game-winning shot to start the season. Take a look at the video of the game-winning shot in the celebration.
Who is that guy? Look at that guy. Look at that guy jumping on the pile.
Too awkward.
Saw the team picture there too. Celebration, threes. Well, guys, the TSTV intramural or TSTV Sports intramural team needs a team name. So 2 points will be awarded to whoever can come up with the best team name.
Texas Smokers, shooting those threes, draining those threes, burning those nets, baby.
All right.
That doesn't sound great.
Peter doesn't like it.
I'm more. I don't know.
I got one. Well, from what I can see from that highlight with the kid running down the court, I don't know who he was.
The kid, you're on the team and you don't even know his name?
It was me, okay? And from my prior...
Hey, you got in on that celebration.
Yeah, from my prior knowledge of the game, I'd probably have to go with the Goofy Whites and the three ballers.
The what?
I'd probably have to go with the Goofy Whites and the three ballers.
The Goofy Whites and the three ballers.
Yeah, from my knowledge of the team and the sort of the makeup of that.
All right.
And the production out of that team, that's probably what I'd go.
I like that one, Reese. Peter, you got anything?
This show is getting very politically incorrect.
We're all having fun here.
As I mentioned before, the TSTV Sports Gentlemen, classy, great celebration at the end, on good fun. Heck of a coaching performance by that coach, by the way.
Was that you too?
He was injured. He didn't get to play, but he willed him to victory. Drew up that three at the end.
Yes. Carlos came with it first. Peter, you had a good one. I think everybody's going to get the points here, but Reese already in the lead there. He's going to get his first victory on College Crossfire.
Congratulations.
Reese, we got time for your FaceTime. What do you got, man? Shout out to mom and dad.
First of all, I'd like to thank my fans, my pit crew, the team. No, but seriously, I'd like to talk a little bit about Richie Incognito and the Jonathan Martin and the Dolphins situation.
Okay.
Absolutely horrific what is going on in the Dolphins organization right now. I mean, when you have Jonathan Martin have to leave his team to go to the hospital reportedly just because of some bullying from Richie Incognito and some of the other teammates. I mean, this is a serious offense in that locker room, and I think it may cost Joe Philbin his job. Possibly they're talking about the firing of Jeff Ireland just because of the ruckus this mass thing has caused, and I think NFL needs to take proper precautions to make sure nothing happens like this in the future.
All right. It's a very good point, Reese. Congratulations on your first victory at College Crossfire. That's all the time we have for tonight, folks. Thanks for tuning into another episode of College Crossfire. You can catch us right here every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Also, remember to follow us on Twitter at CollegeXFire. We'd love to hear from you guys out there. For all the latest in UT sports coverage, tune into College Press Box every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. For everyone in Master Control, the studio, the panel, myself, have a good night. We're hitting threes on College Crossfire.